Hello, thank you for being here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where in the world you are joining us from. We are so excited to begin welcoming our new cohort of admitted students to UC San Diego. We're going to give it just one more minute or so to allow more folks to join us, and then we'll get started shortly. Thanks again for being here. All right, so we are going to go ahead and get started. And as a reminder, you are joining us for our pre-arrival webinar, and today we'll be focusing on how to request the Form I-20 or DS-2019 as an international student here at UC San Diego. But before we jump in, I want to go to our next slide and just offer you such a warm welcome to UC San Diego. Like I said, it's so exciting for us to actually begin to interact with our new cohort of students. We know that it takes months and months of preparation before you actually physically arrive, oftentimes in San Diego. And so we are here to welcome you. We're here to assist you wherever we can. These webinars are actually co-hosted by our office, the International Services and Engagement Office, and then our good partners and friends in the Division of Graduate Education and Postdoctoral Affairs, often referred to as GEPA. And so we work really collaboratively together to host these. You'll often find that UC San Diego is a very large campus with lots of different offices. But one of the things we try to do is work really closely together so you can be connected to all the resources and information you need. So welcome. We're so glad you're here. My name is Grace Fuller. I get to serve as the Assistant Director of International Experience and Engagement at the International Services and Engagement Office, often referred to as ISEO. And I'll hand it over to my colleagues to introduce themselves. So over to you, Marie.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Marie Monlapaz Rivera, and I'm the Assistant Director of International Student Services at ISEO. We're happy to welcome you today. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, everyone. My name
And
is
I'll
Mary
kick it off.
Hogan. I'm the Director of Graduate Admissions in the Division of Graduate Education and Postdoctoral Affairs.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shauna Slabiota, and I'm the Graduate Care and Student Life Advisor in the Division of Graduate Education and Postdoctoral Affairs.
So as you can see, we're so lucky to have so many different folks joining us who can answer a myriad of questions. So we hope you came with your questions. We'll try to get through as many questions as we can, while knowing that we have so many different pre-arrival webinars coming up covering so many different topics. All right, here is a sneak peek into our agenda. So we'll do a brief overview of our office, the International Services and Engagement Office, and what we do on campus, how we support our international students. Then we'll hand it over to our colleagues in graduate admissions to go over some graduate admissions reminders. So you are probably just beginning your journey, and so we want to make sure that you have those critical pieces of information as you get started. Then, like I mentioned earlier, the bulk of today's session is really going to be focusing on applying for your Form I-20 and DS-2019. We'll look a little bit into what that means then to apply for your F1 or J1 visa. But that's actually going to be the focus of next week's webinar, whereas this week's webinar is really going to go into detail about that certificate of eligibility, the Form I-20 or DS-2019. We'll close with some approaching deadlines and reminders, as well as remind you about our upcoming webinars and additional resources. And then at the end of each and every webinar, we are going to have a dedicated time for open question and answer. So this is your chance to really ask those questions, be able to hopefully get a live ability to connect with us. And yeah, get some additional information and resources. Okay, so a little bit of housekeeping before we begin. You've probably already noticed that you are in listen only mode, which means you can hear us, but unfortunately we can't hear you. So the main way that we'll be interacting together today is through that Q&A feature on your Zoom menu bar. So you're going to use the Q&A feature to submit your questions. And like I said, we'll have a dedicated time for open question and answer at the end. So while you're free to submit questions throughout today's webinar, if we don't answer it right away, it might be because we're planning on addressing that question during the content of today's webinar, or we think that's a question maybe better suited to answer during our open Q&A during our live session. However, we also have our contact form. So if for any reason we didn't get your question answered today, in a minute here, I'll go ahead and put our contact form link in the chat, and that's a great way to ask questions of our office as well. And finally, we are recording. So you'll be able to view this webinar recording as well as all other pre-arrival webinar recordings at inewstudentwebinars.ucsd.edu. So if this is your first Zoom webinar, I'd just like to give a screenshot of what that might look like. So again, on the control panel of your Zoom menu, you'll see that Q&A, and then that should pop up this box where you can submit your questions. You can choose to submit it anonymously or with your name. Please know that we do try to answer more general questions that we think would benefit a large group of students. If it's really case specific, we'll do our best to answer some of those, but we might point you to our contact form just because we don't have the ability to get into too much of the nitty gritty of it today. But that's an additional resource. And if you are anonymous, sometimes we don't know who asked what question because it will just show up as an anonymous attendee. So that's something else to keep in mind. Okay, so a little bit overview of our office, the International Services and Engagement Office. So we are an office on campus that really supports our international community here at UC San Diego. So we used to have 30 professional staff and 15 student staff. We have a little bit lower than this right now, but we are no less dedicated to supporting our international community. And what do we do? So we are here to really support and guide our international students and scholars with their academic and personal goals, supporting a successful transition to campus and student life, and hopefully meaningful engagement with the university and the local community. So we really see ourselves as a hub for our global community, supporting our international students, scholars, and families, but really how our whole campus interacts with the world. And I would be remiss to also not shine a light on our students. So one of my favorite things about UC San Diego is our student population. So we support over 10,000 students here at UC San Diego, international students, I should say, over 8,000 who are here currently enrolled, and then over 2,000 who are here working after graduation on work authorization. So that's a really robust international community. You can see the breakdown between undergrad and graduate students is about 4,000 each, give or take, and you can also see some of the most common academic departments or majors, as well as our top 10 places of origin. So while we definitely have a few countries where we have many of our international students joining us from, we do have over 100 countries represented here at UC San Diego. And so with that, we are so excited for you to join our international community. Our international community we know that it makes our community better. We're so enriched by your presence. And so we're so excited to welcome you and have you join us in the fall. And with that, I'll hand it over to our colleagues in GEPA to go over some first steps as a graduate student here at UC San Diego.
Thanks so much, Grace. So this information should be familiar to you, but we want to go over everything just to make sure you're clear on next steps. So you all likely have seen your applicant status portal at this point. And in the next slide, we're going to show screenshots of it and just go over kind of high level the different sections. But when you log into your application account, and again, that's the URL there, and in the chat, thank you so much, Grace. To view your applicant status portal, you'll see a few items on your checklist as next steps. And everyone might have slightly different checklist items. You'll see a statement of legal residence form if it's listed as a to-do item if your program requires it. I do just want to point out that not all programs require students filling out this form. So if you don't see a statement of legal residence form on your applicant status portal, there's no reason to panic. It just means it's not required for you. And if you have any questions or you want to double check anything, you can always email the addresses at the bottom of this slide, gradadmissions@ucsd.edu. And our team is happy to just confirm things for you and make sure that, you have all your ducks in a row and are clear on next steps. You'll also notice in your applicant status portal that you have a provisional admission status. Most all students are provisionally admitted at UC San Diego at the time of admission. So you'll see this in your decision letter. It notes that you're provisionally admitted and it provides you with next steps, again, that are specific to you and your academic history. for how to finalize your admission. You'll see these items listed under the pending admissions document section in your portal. And again, those are the steps that you need to take in order to finalize your admission. And on this next slide, we'll go over what your portal looks like. So again, this is just a sample portal. Yours is going to look slightly different depending on your academic history. And we're not showing every single tab in this screenshot, but we're showing the two that you're going to engage with the most. So there's the Home tab, which you'll see on the left-hand side. It's going to show your status update. So that's where you're going to be able to view your admission letter that notes that you're provisionally admitted. You'll also see your status. So if you've already accepted your offer of admission, it's going to say accepted like it does in this screenshot. If you haven't yet accepted your offer of admission, it's going to say admitted. And then below, you'll see that there are items prompting you to take some next steps, looking at your checklist and also some hyperlinks to important pages on our website. Most notably, there's the What to Do Immediately page. That's a really important page to review. It talks about next steps with potential housing and getting on the housing wait list. And it goes over other important items that you need to have on top of your mind if you're going to be joining us this fall. You'll also see forms. So again, in this example, we see the decision reply form and we see the statement of legal residence form. There's little green check marks next to these because in this example, the individual had already accepted their offer of admission. If you haven't yet filled out your decision reply form, there's going to be a red X next to it. And then same goes for the statement of legal residence. Again, though, not all programs require the statement of legal residence. So if it's not showing up there, it's no reason to worry. But again, you can always email us. On the right-hand side, you'll see the tab that's your checklist items. You're going to be engaging a lot with this checklist items tab. There is a lot of information on this tab. So you'll see the header required documents, and you'll also see information and detailed instructions, again, for you specifically based on your academic history of how to take next steps and how to submit any final transcripts or final evaluations. So for students who have, for example, attended an institution outside of the United States to earn a bachelor's or another advanced degree, we do require a WES evaluation or an evaluation from the evaluation company. So all of these details will be listed in this required documents section. So for this particular example, we see that this student is required to submit a final official transcript with degree conferral info. But again, your checklist item is going to be specific to your academic history. So if you've gotten multiple degrees or taken, courses at multiple institutions, or again, depending on if you've earned your previous degrees or the degree that you're working towards right now at an institution outside of the United States, you are going to receive detailed instructions for those next steps there. And again, also, in addition to the detailed instructions under required documents in the how to submit bar and header, you'll see detailed instructions for how to actually take steps towards completing the requirement. So our hope is that, everything is laid out in a clear and consistent way for you all. But again, if there are any questions whatsoever, our team over in graduate admissions, we're the main point of contact, and you can email us at gradadmissions@ucsd.edu. One other quick note that I want to leave you on before we move on is that our office right now, we're still in the process of admitting students. And so we review, all of your documentation when we're admitting you. We don't generally start to review final official documents until June. So while we encourage you to start taking steps sooner rather than later to finalize your admission, if you've accepted your offer of admission at UCSD, if you submit your materials and you're wondering, gosh, why hasn't my status updated from provisional to final? It's going to be because we generally don't start reviewing those documents until June. So again, you can always email us with any concerns or if you want to confirm that something has been received, but we're here to help, and there's no reason to panic if you don't see your status update in the next couple of months if you're already on top of all of this and taking these steps.
Welcome again. We can't wait to see you here at UC San Diego. ISCO has tried to make the process of arriving and starting your program as seamless and intuitive as possible. International students have the dual responsibility of following academic processes in addition to your immigration requirements. So we'll be looking at inewstudent.ucsd.edu, and it is intended to help you in all matters of immigration to get you from where you are now to San Diego to begin your program. Navigate to inewstudent.ucsd.edu, and you can see this skill arrow to click more and click on the master's and PhD students. That will take you to the site on the right that will guide you from requesting your immigration documents to preparing for your arrival to finally arriving. Please lean heavily into the resources as you navigate the arrival process. So maintaining your status. Before we dive into any documents or processes, we want to start with an important reminder. Your immigration status is your responsibility. Our office, ISEO, will always do our best to answer questions, provide guidance, and help you navigate the rules. But ultimately, your status belongs to you. This is your life, and we want you to feel empowered. You've made a huge investment of your time, energy, and money to come to UC San Diego. No one will ever be as invested in your success as you are, and understanding your immigration responsibilities is part of protecting that investment. You'll hear the phrase from us a lot about maintaining your status. What we mean is doing what is required to remain in the U.S. legally in F1 or J1 status while you study at UC San Diego. It's also important to know that maintaining your immigration status may differ from your maintaining your academic status, because this terminology will come up throughout your time here in emails, in advising sessions or workshops. We want you to start early in helping you understand it. You can always review the expectations on our Maintaining Visa Status checklist. So let's talk about how to get started on applying for your F1 or J1 student visa. Here at ISEO, we've broken down the visa process into 6 simple steps. Step 1 is to request and receive your Form I-20 or DS-2019 from ISEO. I want to point out that if you're currently inside the U.S. as an F1 or J1 student, this step is also required of you. So if you're attending this webinar and thinking, I don't need a F1 or J1 visa because I already have one, note that you will still need to request a Form I-20 or DS-2019 from ISEO in order to attend UC San Diego. So this information in today's webinar is relevant to you. If you are in need of an F1 or J1 visa stamp in order to enter the United States, then the next step, once you receive your Form I-20 or DS-2019, will be to schedule your visa interview. This will involve submitting the visa application, the Form DS-160, and paying the fees to your local U.S. Embassy or consulate. It is important to note the best practice is to apply in your home country or country that you're a long-term resident. Then you will attend your visa interview upon scheduled date. And upon successful completion of the visa interview and application process at the U.S. Embassy or consulate will provide you with your F1 or J1 visa stamp and your passport. And then you'll be able to plan your travel to the United States. The visa process does not stop there. Once you have your Form I-20 or DS-2019 plus your F1 or J1 visa stamp, you need to successfully enter the United States. This is called applying through at the port of entry, where you go through U.S. Customs. And upon successfully passing through U.S. Customs, you will then be able to arrive to UC San Diego. The last step in the visa process is to arrive to UC San Diego and complete what is called SEVIS check-in in order to activate your F1 or J1 status. This will be a form that you submit to our office showing proof that you have successfully entered the U.S. under your F1 or J1 visa. Once you have submitted your SEVIS check-in form, we will activate your F1 or J1 status, and you will be an active status international student in the U.S. So that's a big overview. But for today's purposes, we're really going to focus on requesting and receiving your I-20 or DS-2019 from ISEO. And this is required for our transfer students as well. So today we'll be looking at the first step in the visa process. Next week, on Tuesday, March 10th at 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, we will be holding our next pre-arrival webinar where we will discuss the next 3 steps in the process, which is the visa application. So we'll look at this once you have received your Form I-20 DS-2019 and how you actually apply for your F1 or J1 visa stamp. If you haven't already registered for this session, you can do that by visiting inewstudentwebinars.ucsd.edu. So we hope to see you next week to look at the next steps. All right, so let's talk about how to request your Form I-20 or DS-2019. Again, before we start, I just want to pause and say, if you're listening to this webinar you're currently inside the United States on an F1 or J1 visa, maybe you're graduating from a U.S. bachelor's or a master's program this year, or you'll be finishing up your OPT, optional practical training, and you'll be starting a new graduate program at UC San Diego this fall, and you're hoping to transfer your CVIS record, your F1 or J1 record to UC San Diego, you are still required, this is really important, to request a Form I-20 or DS-2019 from ISCO. This is an important part of the CVIS transfer process, so the information in this webinar will be relevant for you. So please don't leave and stay with us today. But also mark your calendar to join us for the Thursday, May 5th pre-arrival webinar dedicated to CVIS transfer process. During this webinar, we'll be hosting a session just like this to help you understand how to move or transfer your F1 or J1 record from your current school to UC San Diego. So make sure to join us for that. The link to register for that session will also be available soon at inewstudentwebinars.ucsd.edu. Thank you, Grace. So to request your Form I-20 or DS-2019, you will confirm you're requesting an I-20 for an F1 visa or a DS-2019 for a J1 visa. Let me briefly explain what the Form I-20 or DS-2019 is. Shauna. You must first have received your Form I-20 in order to apply for an F1 visa stamp at your local U.S. consulate, or you must first have received your Form DS-2019 in order to apply for a J1 visa stamp at your local consulate. This is because the Form I-20 or DS-2019 is your certificate of visa eligibility. In other words, the Form I-20 or DS-2019 lets the consulate know that you have been admitted to UC San Diego and that you're seeking a U.S. visa in order to come to the United States as a student. If you're not sure which one you should request, see our guide at inewstudent.ucsd.edu, and this will help you determine which is most appropriate for you. So you must receive your Form I-20 or DS-2019 first before you can apply for your visa stamp. You can request your Form I-20 or DS-2019 from iservices.ucsd.edu. Once you have received it, then you will have the information you need to begin your visa stamp application process. At inewstudent.ucsd.edu, under Step 1, apply for an F1 or J1 certificate of eligibility. You will find instructions for how to access iServices, how to submit your new admit request, and what documents you will be required to upload to your new admit request. Under the Preparing for Submission, you will also find information and clarification on what documents you will need to prepare to upload to your new admit request. This includes things like the F1 and J1 funding requirements. It's really important. In order to obtain your Form I-20 or DS-2019, you will need to submit financial documentation proving that you meet the F1 or J1 financial requirements. So make sure you review that information so that you know what amount of funding you must show in order to receive your Form I-20 or DS-2019. The financial documentation you submit to our office, you will also be required to bring to your visa interview. It also reviews other requirements like your passport, biographic page, admission letters, and CVIS transfer confirmation, etc. So important deadlines. The deadline by which you submit your new admit requests are outlined on this website under Submitted Request for an Immigration Document, Form I-20 F1 or DS-2019 J1. ISCO is required by law to verify that each person applying for a Form I-20 F1 or Form DS-2019 has sufficient funds to cover the period of your stay in the United States. In most cases, the documentation that will also be required at the U.S. Embassy consulate when applying for an F1 or J1 visa. Newly admitted students, as well as continuing and returning students, must prove they meet the funding requirements for their Form I-20 or DS-2019. One of the most important reasons students experience delays receiving their Form I-20 or DS-2019 is due to issues with your financial documentation or funding requirements. Regardless of the funding source, all financial documents must be dated within 3 months at the time of submission to ISCO, be in English or accompanied by an official certified English translation, and show funds that are immediately available. Funding cannot be frozen or unlocked accounts unless the document clearly shows a maturity date before your term start date at UC San Diego. You can refer to our funding requirements webpage to see what financial documentation is accepted as well as other required amounts for your program. iservices.ucsd.edu opened on December 1st, 2025 for newly admitted students. You can access iServices by following the instructions at inewstudent.ucsd.edu and in the drawer submitting a request for an immigration document form I-20 or DS-2019. Please note that due to the new Triton student system, TSS, being launched by the university this March 2026, the process for setting up required accounts and requesting your visa documents may differ from your peers. Graduate students starting their programs before fall, in the winter, spring 2026, or summer 2026 may need to follow a different process than graduate students starting their program in the fall. For all scenarios, you will receive email communication from ISEO regarding what steps you need to take for your particular situation. So, to request your Form I-20 or DS-2019, you can log into iservices.ucsd.edu. It will look like this, and you will select Starting a New Program at UC San Diego. From there, you will select which admit request you will submit. Remember, if you will begin a degree program with UC San Diego in F1 status, you will submit the new admit I-20 request, as shown here highlighted on the left. If you will begin a degree program with UC San Diego in a J1 visa status, you will submit the new admit DS-2019 request, highlighted in the right-hand column. If you're in the U.S. in a different non-immigrant visa status like F2, H4, L2, or dependent status, but plan to change to an F1 or J1, you can schedule an appointment with an ISEO advisor at icontact.ucsd.edu to discuss further. Be sure to submit all the required e-forms within iServices request. Incomplete submissions with missing e-forms cannot be processed. Finally, be sure to submit the submission confirmation. The submission confirmation is what completes your request and sends it to ISEO for our review. You will be required to complete all these e-forms in your Form I-20 or DS-2019 request. Requesting your Form I-20 or DS-2019, the processing time for your I-20 or DS-2019 document is generally 15 business days from the date you successfully submit a complete, meaning no further updates, edits needed, all information is correct, and the new admit request in iServices. Please note the processing time for your new admit request will depend on a number of different factors and cannot be guaranteed. Most importantly, new admit requests will be set to incomplete when additional information, updated information, or clarification is needed on your new admit request. For this reason, please thoroughly review all e-form instructions and your response prior to submitting. It is important to note that the days that your iServices new admit request remain in an incomplete status will not count towards the general 15-day processing time and may cause delay in processing. If your application is incomplete or invalid, you will be contacted by an ICO advisor with instructions to resubmit or add any clarifying information to your request in iServices. Please note that the speed at which your new admit request is completed is directly connected to how well you review and follow instructions on our website and on iServices. Take your time when submitting so you do not have to correct errors later. So, to recap, please review the instructions at inewstudent.ucsd.edu in advance of submitting your new admit request so that you are able to successfully complete and submit it from the start. This will help you receive your I-20 or DS-2019 as quickly as possible in the general 15-day processing time. Once your Form I-20 or DS-2019 is issued, you can see examples here on the screen, it will be emailed to you. Additionally, you will also be able to view it in iServices. Be sure to download it and print it and sign it by hand. Students often ask us, can I sign this electronically or digitally? The answer is no. The U.S. government allows universities to electronically or digitally sign the Form I-20 or DS-2019, but for you, the student, you're required to print and sign this form by hand. You will be required to show the printed and handed signed document at your visa interview when passing through U.S. Customs to enter the U.S. Please remember to review the document for accuracy. The CVIS ID number, which can be seen here at the top of your F1 I-20 or DS-2019, the biographical information, your program information, your funding, and the DSO or ARO signature, and make sure you sign it as well. For more information and details on reviewing for accuracy, see inewstudent.ucsd.edu. All right, so that was a lot of information, and this is the first step in the visa process. Once you have received your Form I-20 or DS-2019, you will have the information you need to submit your visa application to your local U.S. Embassy or consulate. Please join us at our next pre-arrival webinar where we'll take a look at the visa application process. Now I'll hand it over to my colleague, Grace.
Thank you so much, Marie. Yes, it's so helpful. This is your first step in requesting your F1 or your J1 visa, and so we like to go over this in detail. I also want to note we did get a few questions in the chat. So as we mentioned earlier, UC San Diego is launching a new Triton student information system, and so with that, there has been a little bit of delay in terms of getting you your ID to request some of these, to log into some of these systems and request these documents. If for some reason you have not received an email from our office and you're a fall 2026 new admit, what you can do, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put this in the chat again, is you can access our contact form. I just put it in the chat. For that, you'll select yourself as a newly admitted student, and you'll choose the drop-down option for I-Services request or technical to support to submit this inquiry. So this is going to be the best way that we can add you to our list and our radar to make sure we send you this, and you can get started on this process. But with that, I am so excited to talk about the ways that you can get engaged here with our community at UC San Diego. So one of the best ways to get engaged and also to kind of get a sneak peek into the different types of events we offer and community building is through our iEvents calendar. So our iEvents calendar is a live calendar that's populated by our office as well as other offices on campus and student orgs for all events that target either an international audience or have a focus on global engagement. I know many students will bookmark this, ievents.ucsd.edu, because then when they're wondering, hey, like what's happening this weekend? What's happening this week? They'll go to iEvents to see what's going on and then choose to join us then. We also have our I-programs, and our I-programs are our signature programs. So these are programs that we offer on a continual basis, usually once a month throughout the year, to give you touch points for community. So for example, our global coffee hour is typically the second Wednesday of every month, and it sounds just like it is. It's a chance for you to grab a cup of coffee and a pastry and connect with our international community here. So we often have our ISEO staff members join us, many international students, scholars, and families. We'll often have study abroad returnees join us and domestic students as well. So it's just a great laid back way to start to get involved. English in Action is our English conversation program. So if English isn't your first language and you would like to practice, this is a great program. You're going to get paired with a native English speaker to be able to meet weekly throughout the academic year and practice English in a very low-key conversational format. Triton Trekkers is our collaboration with Outback Adventures or outdoor recreation. So this is our opportunity to make the most of our beautiful backyard of San Diego, and we partner with Outback Adventures to offer trips like moonlight kayaking or rock climbing Mission Gorge or snorkeling. So this is a great opportunity, and Triton Trekkers are trips designed just for international students. ISAC stands for International Student Advisory Council. This is a leadership experience. So if you're really invested in the international student experience here at UC San Diego, we highly recommend you join us for our ISAC, our International Student Advisory Council. And then finally, we have game night and craft event also on a monthly basis. So game night is just a simple, laid-back opportunity to play some games, eat some food, connect with your friends, bring your family. We have a lot of American games. We have a lot of games from around the world. It's a great time. And then crafting event is a partnership with our craft center, where we'll do crafts once a month. And usually it's kind of in tandem with the different celebrations that are going on. So we just recently had like a Lunar New Year themed craft event and things like that. And so again, it's a great way to just kind of connect with others in a laid back environment. And you can learn about all of these at iprograms.ucsd.edu. Okay, so one program that I specifically want to call attention to is our Grad Pals program. So our Grad Pals program is a peer mentorship program designed specifically for international graduate students. So you can go ahead, I put the link in the chat, and fill out this form to be matched with another graduate student. In the form, you can actually indicate if you would prefer to be matched with a domestic, like an American student, or perhaps another international student from your same home country. It'll ask you questions about what is going to be your department, what's going to be your field of study, things like that. And to the best of our ability, we try to match you with someone who you share a lot of the common factors with. But this is a great way. A lot of students say it was so helpful in their transition to be able to ask a peer about their experience as they prepared to join us and arrive at UC San Diego. And then we also have a number of guides. So we know that we share a lot of information at these webinars. And while that's great and they're so thorough, it can be a lot to digest. So we have put together a few guides for you to maybe help make the information a little bit more digestible, easier to follow. If you're more of a visual learner, this can be helpful. So first we have our welcome guide. Our welcome guide is a really helpful guide filled with checklists of things you need to do kind of now as you prepare for arrival and then upon arrival. So it breaks it up into different sections and it can be a really helpful resource. Soon we'll also have our surf check guide. This is a guide created for students by students that address the most frequently asked questions from our international students. So everything from how do I arrange transportation from LAX to San Diego, to how do I set up a US bank account, how do I set up a phone account, all of these different questions are addressed in the Surf Check guide. So I put the link where you can find all of our guides in the chat. And then finally, we would love for you to follow us on Instagram. So what's fun about our Instagram is it's really meant to be this idea of what is an international student life like at UC San Diego. So our handle is istudents.ucsd. And again, it's a great opportunity to just kind of get an idea of like what events are going on, what is a day in the life for one of our students, and different opportunities like that. We often also offer Instagram giveaways. And so that's another great incentive. So if you'd like to connect and kind of start to get a feel for what your life might be like, go ahead and give us a follow. Okay, so now I'm going to get into a few more like logistical resources and reminders before we open it up for open question and answer. Okay, so there's a couple things you can start doing now. So one is requesting your visa documents via iServices. So that was the content of today's webinar. So your primary access point will be iservices.ucsd.edu. A complement to that is going to be inewstudent.ucsd.edu, because that's essentially going to be your checklist. Like as you're trying to go through and say, okay, what do I need to submit the Form I-20 or the request for the Form I-20 or DS-2019? Please pay careful attention. I want to echo what Marie said. The time of it takes for us to process these documents is directly related to a complete and accurate submission. So pay really close attention to the funding requirements and things like that. As I mentioned, if you are having difficulty accessing iServices or you haven't gotten an email to be able to access it, please go ahead and submit that contact form. That's going to be the best way that we can add you to our list and then send you an email for you to request that Form I-20 or DS-2019. Something else you can start doing now is actually applying for on-campus housing. And I will say that we are actually going to have I think that's our third or fourth webinar, is we invite folks from our housing, dining, and hospitality, so our on-campus housing folks. We also invite folks to talk about off-campus housing, and we invite folks to talk about general housing resources. So that's a really helpful webinar. I would highly recommend you join us for. But you can start applying for on-campus housing. We like to note that it won't be until mid-May that housing, dining, and hospitality, often referred to as HDH, even starts to send out their housing contracts. So we always say apply early, but you may not actually hear anything until mid-May because HDH sends out their housing offer 60 days prior to the requested move-in date. So depending on when you request to move in, that's when you'll hear about a housing offer. But you can learn more at hdh.ucsd.edu. Then in July, this is another important date. That's oftentimes the deadline to submit your health immunization requirements and complete your required trainings. Again, we will actually have our partners from Student Health join us for a pre-arrival webinar, and they're going to go into a lot of detail about your required health immunizations, as well as your required health insurance. So this is a really helpful webinar. I'd highly recommend you join us for. But if you'd like to learn more in the meantime, you can go to studenthealth.ucsd.edu. And then in September is when lots of exciting things happen. So that's when tuition is due and you move in and you check in so we can register your CVIS record and you join us for orientation. So a lot of really exciting things happen in September, and we are so excited to hopefully be able to meet you face to face then. But if you would like a sneak peek, you're welcome to go to iorientation.ucsd.edu. Okay, so like I mentioned, we have lots of webinars coming up. So we cover a lot of different topics. So our next webinar will really focus on applying for your US visa. So Marie kind of went over applying for your certificate of eligibility, your I-20 or DS-2019. That is one step in the process of the overall applying for your US student visa. Like I mentioned, we also are going to partner with colleagues across campus to offer a graduate student housing webinar. Additionally, we're going to have a webinar focusing on student health, insurance, and immunization requirements. We're going to have a webinar that talks about graduate student funding, another webinar that's going to talk about English language requirements for instructional assistants. So maybe you're interested in being like a teaching assistant or a TA or a GSR or things like that. This will be a really helpful webinar for you. We're also going to have a webinar about graduate student life and getting involved on campus as an international graduate student, finances and student accounts, campus safety, getting set up in the US, a CVIS transfer. So you can really see that we try our best. All of the major topics that students have questions about, we try to offer a webinar on so that this can be really helpful for you. So you can register for these webinars as well as access the recording, usually in about 2 weeks' time at inewstudentwebinars.ucsd.edu. Wonderful. Okay, so with that, we are actually going to transition to our open question and answer, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So I was able to answer a few questions while Marie was presenting, and I am going to start off with some of these questions as well. Okay. And then I'll invite my colleagues to join depending on what the question is. But our first question is when accessing our contact form, so that's going to be the UCSD Koali build link, what to select at the page. So when you go to our contact form, and Shauna, I'm actually going to take over screen sharing if that's okay.
Absolutely. I'll stop.
Okay. So this is our ISEO contact form. So this is going to be a really helpful resource. If you are a student who is trying to request your Form I-20 or DS-2019 and you can't access iServices and you haven't gotten an email from our office to access iServices, what you're going to do is you're going to put in your last name, your first name, an email we can reach you at. If you have your PID, great. And if you don't, you can put NA. And then you are going to select that you are a newly admitted international student and that you have a question about iServices request technical assistance. And so you're going to put iServices technical support. And then in additional information, please be as thorough as possible. So for many of you, it's going to say, I'm a newly admitted student. I would like to request my form I-20 or DS-2019, and I am having issues accessing iServices in order to do so. This is going to be the most effective method for our team to add you to our list and then to prompt that process. With some of the TSS changes, we are seeing a delay in getting student lists and records to be able to send out this information. So if for some reason you haven't received that email from our office yet, we can add you to our list this way. So please go ahead and utilize our contact form if you have questions about accessing iServices. Okay, I'm going to pause the screen sharing for now.
Grace, the next question also has a link. I'm not quite sure where this goes.
Yes. So for this question, this is going to go back to, let me see if I can find the relevant slide. So when you are in iServices, you've successfully logged into iservices.ucsd.edu. Then you are going to navigate to the option starting a new program at UC San Diego. Because you're a newly admitted student, you are starting a new program here. So you're going to select this, and then from here, it should take you to different tasks. And depending on if you want to request the form I-20 for the F1 visa or the form DS-2019 for the J1 visa, you're going to select either of these two options. So on the left is going to be the I-20 for the F1. The one on the right is going to be the DS-2019 for the J1. So again, you should be going to starting a new program at UC San Diego, and then new admin I-20 request or new admin DS-2019 request. If for some reason you can't see these options, then that would be another reason to submit our contact form. Again, as thorough as you can be when submitting our contact form is going to allow us to help you the most efficiently. So for example, if you can provide screenshots of like, hey, I'm supposed to see this, but instead I see that. Again, that's going to help us really be able to kind of triage your request and really identify what exactly is going on and try to get you your answer as quickly as possible. Wonderful. Marie, do you want to answer this question out loud? Okay, Marie actually got to the next question. Yes, so for the question asking about if we can provide a contact number to solve the I-20 question, again, your best way to do that is going to be submitting our contact form. So that's what I'm going to answer this. Okay. Okay, so this is another great question. So this question reads, I want to ask if the application reference number mentioned in the status portal is the same as the PID we need to fill. I would say you can go ahead and put that number. For you, that's probably going to be the most relevant student ID number. It may not quite be the PID that we're used to because again, with the changes in the TSS system, but it's going to be helpful to have that on file. And I would say when in doubt, provide more information than less information. More information is going to help us kind of identify who you are as well as any questions you might have. But I also saw Mary unmute, so I'm going to let Mary chime in too.
Yeah, just wanted to chime in there. And Grace, what you said is correct. It's not the same ID number, but if it's helpful to ISEO, which it sounds like it would be as another way to identify you as an applicant or as a student, you can certainly list that. But you are going to be getting a different ID number. Again, we stipulate it on our What to Do Immediately page. It's in the portal as well. But as Grace shared, there is a delay in TSS, which is our student information system, student ID generation. And so you are not going to have access to that ID right now, and you will be notified and you will receive it when it's available to you.
Thank you, Mary. And that actually kind of addressed, go ahead, Shauna. Please go ahead.
No, there was actually a question that Mary answered, but I thought it might be helpful to share with the larger group, where there was somebody who asked about waiting to request their I-20 until after their admission is no longer provisional. And actually, you should not wait to have that finalized admission. You really need to start this process as soon as you can, because as Mary mentioned, the team will start reviewing those documents to finalize admission in June. And so we don't want you to wait for that. We want you to get started on this process before that. I should say the process for applying for your I-20. And then you can also be working on finalizing your admission, but don't wait for that. You could be working on both of those kind of at the same time. That's all.
Wonderful. No, I completely echo Shauna. These processes can take a long time. And as an international student, getting your form I-20, DS-2019, and then taking that form and applying for the actual visa can take months and months and months. And so the earlier you apply, the better set up for success you will be. So our recommendation is, yes, do not wait. Requesting that Form I-20 or DS-2019 is something you can do right now, and that is something we'd highly recommend that you do right now to hopefully make your transition to UC San Diego as smooth as possible. For this next question in the chat, it asks, do we need a student mail ID and password for requesting the I-20? If yes, when will you provide it? So again, that's going to be if you're a fall 2026 new admit, I'm going to direct you to kind of follow that process that we went over in the chat. Okay, we have another question. Thank you for the great session. Thank you for being here. My passport expires December 18th, 2027. Does that mean I need to get a new I-20 and a new F1 visa? This is a great question. Marie, I saw you come camera on. Would you like to speak to this question? I'm also happy to, so either way. I think you said go ahead. Okay, I'll speak to it, and then Marie, please chime in with anything I've missed. So in terms of a part of your required documents, what we are going to suggest is that you have a passport that is valid 6 months into the future at the time of entry. So depending on your time of entry, you want that passport to be valid 6 months into the future. Now, that being said, your passport is going to be different than your F1 visa. The F1 visa is going to be a stamp in your passport, and the I-20 is going to be an additional document that you travel with in addition to your passport and the visa stamp inside of your passport. So you want to make sure that all of those documents are valid at the time of entry. So you want a valid I-20 that is from our office, from UC San Diego, so you can enter. You want to have your F1 visa in correspondence with that CVIS ID. And then you want to have a passport that is valid 6 months into the future at the time of your entry to the US. Marie, anything you would add to that?
I think you covered it. Thank you, Grace.
Okay, wonderful. Yes, so let me go ahead and make a note of one thing. We have a question of when will these recordings be available? So typically these webinar recordings will be available around 2 weeks' time. We will put a PDF copy of the slides up on the screen, or up on the site. So at least you can refer back and just kind of like click through the slides. I will say that in addition to this webinar is really an overview and a verbal overview of what's listed on our iNew Student website. And so one of my top recommendations would be referring to inewstudent.ucsd.edu, because again, that breaks down the process like step by step. So if you follow it like a checklist, it's going to give you a lot of information and a lot of detail. Now, because it's so thorough, we know that it can be overwhelming, which is why we offer these webinars, because we know that folks learn in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of different ways to engage with information. And we know that for some, the webinars is more helpful to kind of understand the process. So That's a long answer to say that the webinars will generally be available 2 weeks after the recording date. Okay, so our next question is, I'm from India, and visa interview slots fill very fast here. It is commonly recommended to apply for an interview before May. The I-20 approval should happen by that time, right? So that is a great question, and that is why we would say apply for your Form I-20 now. And make sure that you closely review our website and specifically like our funding requirements, because it's generally like 15 business days or 3 weeks for us to process your application from the time of a complete and correct submission. So that is going to be directly tied to if we need to put it in draft status, ask for additional information, ask for additional clarification on your funding documents. That process might take longer. So the sooner you apply for this Form I-20 or DS-2019, and assuming that it is a complete and correct submission, then the sooner you can get that I-20, and that's going to be the certificate of eligibility that you need to make that visa appointment. So if you are feeling stressed about making the visa appointment, and I totally understand, I know that many of our students in your home country, those visa appointment slots do fill up quickly, so that is a very valid concern. Start this process now, and then at our next pre-arrival webinar, we're going to talk about just that, taking your Form I-20 or DS-2019 and actually going through the process of applying for a U.S. student visa. Yes, so this question is if we can provide the link to access the presentation PDF. So that's what's going to be uploaded to inewstudentwebinars.ucsd.edu. So again, that's kind of going to be your one-stop shop, so to speak, for registering for pre-arrival webinars that are happening in the future, as well as accessing resources of everything that we've covered thus far. So give our team a little bit of time, a little bit of patience is much appreciated. We are working hard to try to get all of these resources to you and process all of the requests. But that's hopefully is like a one-stop shop where you can access a lot of the information. Okay, wonderful. Yes, you're so welcome. Thank you for joining us. Okay, wonderful.
Grace, I think we do need to wrap up. I don't know if we want to follow up individually, maybe with this. Oh,
yes. So,
it's gone now.
Yes, I'm just responding to, so we'll answer this last question, and then to Shauna's point, we are at the end of today's session, so please join us for future sessions. We'll have open Q&A at each one of them. Okay, so this question reads, thanks for hosting the session. Thanks for being here. I was wondering in what scenarios we may have not received the Form I-20 yet. I have already accepted my application. So this is a great distinction. Accepting your admission to UC San Diego is not the same as applying for your Form I-20. Those are two different processes. So I'm actually really glad that you submitted this, because I really want to distinguish the two. I'm so glad that you accepted your admission to UC San Diego. Huzzah. We're so excited for you to join us. And as an international student, your next step after accepting your admission to UC San Diego is often then applying for your Form I-20 or DS-2019. So that doesn't happen automatically. That process is initiated by you. So it's really important that you then initiate that process. So go to inewstudent.ucsd.edu, submit our contact form if you're having trouble accessing iServices, but make sure that you are initiating that process, because to use the metaphor, the ball is in your court, so to speak. And so we want to make sure that you don't miss out on that opportunity to do so. So please make sure that you do both, that you accept your offer of admission and then you also apply for your Form I-20 or DS-2019. Okay, thankfully we were able to get through most, if not all, of the questions that came through. Thank you for your engagement. Thank you for your questions. That's why we host these webinars, to hopefully be a resource to you. Please join us next Tuesday for our pre-arrival webinar focusing on applying for your U.S. student visa and the rest of our webinars. And with that, we hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care, everyone.